Welcome to Critical Café.
Join us as we chat about the latest episode,
the campaign as a whole, and Critical Role in general.
All while we partake in a delicious cup of coffee. So grab yourself a tasty beverage,
settle into your favorite cozy spot,
and get ready for a little geek philosophy. Welcome back to Critical Cafe, and I'm going to laugh, everybody, because you didn't know that I didn't hit the record button the first time, and, I'm full transparency on everything we do, so it was my screw up. So you're in the right place because you've seen my camera turn on and off, the sound levels go all over the place, so this is just how it goes. So you know me, I'm Brian, you've seen Crystal, and now we have a special guest. We have Luna joining us, and we'd like to thank her for taking a little bit of time to chat with us about all things Critical Role, but also a little bit about her and how she got started. So thanks so much, Luna, for taking some time and chatting with us today.
No worries. Hello. It's good to be here. It's just good that we were not like an hour into the recording, because I have done that before and it's the worst feeling in the world.
Or after you've recorded and the video goes live and then you realize you made an editing mistake, because that happens to me and I'm like, how many views do I have on this and can I upload this again? So
that literally just happened to me yesterday. I released a video an hour later. Someone was like, there's a big error, a very big error at the end, and I was like, so delete, re-upload.
Yeah, and
well, at least they let you know.
Will tell you. Your true friends will tell you whether or not you messed up or not. So,
true friends and the YouTube comments.
That's true. Well, the YouTube comments will always tell you. That's true.
Yes.
Absolutely. So just to kind of introduce yourself to everyone that may not be familiar, there's probably a small percentage of our viewers that don't know. But just, can you give us a little update about, what you do with your channel and your live stream and everything else related to Critical Role and other things, gaming and D&D that you've been talking about? Maybe just a quick update about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hello, my name is Luna, or Luboffin is my channel name on the internet. My pronouns are she, her. And yeah, I guess I'm a Critical Role YouTuber, which feels weird to say. A fan YouTuber, obviously, not affiliated or endorsed in any way. But yeah, I make breakdowns and recaps of Campaign 3 on my channel on YouTube, and also Candela Obscura. And I did do a few other Campaign 1 things, but at the moment it's mainly Campaign 3. And then I also have a Twitch channel where I stream normally 2 to 3 times a week. I do a pre-Critical Role hype party, which is when I go live just like 2 hours before Critical Role does. I'm kind of hang out and chat. And I also do other like D&D Critical Role related streams. That's pretty much it.
And what's really cool is similar aspect from us. We actually started with general sort of D&D content, tabletop role-playing content, and then we loved Critical Role and been watching forever. And you were actually the inspiration for us even doing this whole series. And here's why. We had been watching Campaign 3 since the beginning, and there were like a few weeks where we were kind of like, it's not that we were bored with it. We just fell out of touch with it. Right. And then episode, I think it was 33 happened. And it was like, the big one. Oh my goodness. And we were immediately sucked back in. So we were like, we need to get caught up with what's going on. So we went back and we watched a lot of your recaps to get caught up with things. Yes. And then, kind of been watching it every week since, just to make sure that we're staying on top of it. But it made me think, like, what got you into Critical Role to start with? Were you a D&D player before, or did Critical Role bring you in, or how did that all work for you?
Yeah, so I started playing D&D first. My first introduction to D&D was listening to a podcast called Dragon Friends, which is an Australian podcast, actual play podcast. It's very, very funny. It's very Australian. And when I say that, I mean there's a lot of swearing, but it's extremely funny, and I love it so much. I really recommend anyone check it out. It's extremely different to Critical Role, but it's really good. So I listened to that and then started playing D&D, started DMing very quickly, I think in 2019. And then I think I'm pretty sure it was pandemic time that I was like, well, now's the time to watch 500 million hours of Critical Role content. Right. So Campaign 2 was airing at the time, and I think they were on like episode 80 when I started, and then I managed to catch up by the time they aired the finale. And I'm still making my way through Campaign 1. And then for the videos, I'd been making, general D&D videos, like some how to play videos, some like D&D cooking, like a bit of I was just kind of experimenting, and I was feeling a bit stuck in a rut. And a friend of mine, Maddie P, who also has a D&D YouTube channel, he suggested that I do some Critical Role content, and I gave it a go. And the second Critical Role video I did, like, completely blew up, got almost 100,000 views, which is still my highest viewed video to date. It was terrifying at the time.
I can imagine.
Yeah. And then I just kind of fell into it from there, I guess. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, I guess I'm making Critical Role content now.
Yeah.
What was that video? What was the viral one? The one that went big? Do you remember what was the content centered around that one?
Yeah, so that was about episode 3, which is the episode where, spoiler, Bertrand dies, and also we get a connection that Lauda is from Whitestone. So it was kind of like 2 really big reveals in one that everyone was like, what? Losing their minds about.
Yeah. A similar thing happened to us with with the channel as a whole. It was really picked up, and I think when we started gaining subscribers was kind of D&D community stuff around OGL and everything else. We kind of had one that went viral, but not to talk about that again. But then another one for this series was Crystal and I really dug into our whole theory around what was going on with Lauda and Delilah, and we did sort of a comprehensive deep dive into what our thoughts were, and that one kind of hit big, and that's what got most of our audience for this series, which was kind of cool. So yeah, similar thing. It was, and I think it's fun too. Like you mentioned, the other podcast being way different. I think that's kind of the beauty of role-playing games in general, is like it can be so many different things to so many different people and take so many different forms that it's like it's great to see how it gets interpreted by so many, or even just like a show like this. Like your interpretations of what they do and what we interpret are going to be different too. You know, it's I don't know. I love the variety and all the stuff that's going on. So very cool. Crystal, did I miss anything with that, or anything you want?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think you covered a lot of it. I mean, I came to Critical Role after Brian did. He introduced me to them. He watched season 1, and I started at season 2, at the start of season 2. And so we went back and hit kind of the highlights of season 1, and I've watched a little bit here and there. I struggle a little bit with the sound quality in the very beginning.
Oh my God, yes.
It's hard. And so I'm like, okay, at what point can I skip through but not miss the meat of the story? So I still need to keep pursuing that, because I keep pausing and going back and pausing and going back. I mean, I know what happens. I just haven't watched the stream. But once we started season 2, other than the little like couple of weeks we took a break at the beginning-ish of season 3, it's been full force. I mean, that's our Thursday nights. So, you know, we love it. We've actually introduced several of our friends to it too. So, you know, different avenues of it. But Brian talks about the fact that like he's never had so many women play D&D with him or be interested in it.
Amazing. Well, no, I mean,
I've just brought so many friends into the fold.
and just, you know, I'm like, I started way back. Like I started playing in mainly 2nd edition, but I started 1st edition. So I've been playing for a long time, and just the community has changed so much, and it's just much more open than it was before, which is an amazing thing. And so I love the fact that people can go online and stream their games, and you can learn from other people and see different people play. It's just way more welcoming than it used to be. And so it's a big thing for me. And so like when I ran, Crystal's a hairdresser. And so when I ran my first game for a few hairdressers sitting at a table and they all loved it, it was like I couldn't go back in time and convince my 13-year-old self that I would ever do that in the future. You know, like it just didn't seem like that would ever match. But yeah, so it's just amazing to me, like what I think it does to kind of bring people together in a lot of ways. But anyway, not to get too much on a tangent on that, but I just, role-playing games in general to me are just an important factor in my life, and have been since I was a kid. So speaking of that, like you mentioned that you were gaming before Critical Role. What got you into gaming just in general?
So I really just played D&D before. That was through that podcast that I listened to. I've never really actually played many video games or done any other kind of gaming. I was a dancer that was kind of my full-time job for like 10 years. So basically, and my mom was also a dancer. Cool. So it it was like I would go to school and then we would go to the dance studio and then we would go home. So like I didn't engage in a lot of pop culture TV gaming. Like I missed so much of it. So it's only been like the last 5 years or so that I've started like playing video games more and other stuff. So yeah, I guess I'm relatively new to the sort of gaming world as a whole. And yeah, I'm just really lucky that I actually do have a bunch of friends who have been playing D&D and other games for a super long time, and they ran like a little introduction game for some of us who'd never played before. And then I was like, this is fun. I'm going to DM immediately. And just jump in.
That's pretty amazing. Like it's almost rare to hear that people want to jump in and DM immediately. Most of the time, it's like a little bit skittish to go in and do that. Crystal's shaking her head already. She's like, "No, I don't want to do that." But that's great.
I've tried for a few home games, and I'm just my nerves get the best of me.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh no, I can't do voices. No, it's not happening.
Yeah.
Well, I think.
Well, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I DM'd for people who'd never played before, which is definitely the way I recommend. Because then when they say, "What does this do?" and you're like, "I don't know," like it's fine. They don't know, you don't know. Like but I feel like if you're DMing for seasoned players, it might be a little bit more intimidating. And I certainly find that now sometimes when I'm DMing for other friends.
Yeah.
I
figure DMing for my
this is what it does. Yeah.
DMing for my 11-year-old might be more my speed.
Yeah. That's so cute.
Brian is an amazing DM. Don't let him sound like he isn't. He really is. He does great voices. He builds his own terrain. We're talking like the whole 9 yards. So he definitely down talks himself a little bit, but he's great. Anybody that has ever sat at our table has left going, what just happened?
No, I just have great players. That's like everybody buys into the story and gets involved in it's a lot of fun. So it was actually the birthday present for myself was one year we just had people over and we did a D&D birthday game, and it was just I wanted to make it a whole tavern experience. We had the whole set dressing was like that. And it was more for me. But they had a blast, which was great. So anyway, enough about me. Yeah. I'll start turning all kinds of shades that I can't color correct later. So, so speaking of Critical Role and you're kind of stepping into that, what about them as a whole hooked you? Because there's a lot of other live stream games. I know they're kind of the OG at this point of ones that are out there, but even before them, there were things like Penny Arcade had, stuff going on, and there were a lot of Dimension 20 since has become really popular too. There's a lot of them out there. What about Critical Role to you still keeps you hooked?
Yeah, it is interesting. I think a big part of just the initial getting into it was, like you said earlier, Crystal, the production quality, because I feel like a lot of, especially I love Acquisitions Incorporated and I have listened to most of it, but again, it's audio quality recording at cons. It's especially the early episodes, so it was just kind of the first one that felt like a production that you could kind of sit into and just feel like you could understand everything and stuff like that. So I guess that was kind of the first thing. And also just because it is such a large part of the TTRPG culture, I guess, it felt fun to kind of step into that and be like, oh, this is what everybody's talking about. I get it now. But I specifically remember the moment where I was like, oh, this game does stuff, which is in campaign 2, there's a moment kind of quite early on when Not turns around and says to the rest of the group, you've got this relationship that Caleb and I have mixed up. He's my boy. I protect him. And I remember I cried so much in that moment. I was like, oh, and that was the first one I think that really emotionally hooked me. And now, of course, now that I know more about campaign 1 and we have Scanlan's big moment, Sam is just perfect at those kind of destroy you emotionally moments. But yeah, I think it was my first time my eyes were kind of open to this idea of it being, I don't know, just having that emotional hook for sure.
Totally. Go ahead, Crystal.
Came later to it. He introduced me to it. And what hooked me to Critical Role is the emotion, the storytelling, the immersion in it, where like, I can't tell you how many times I've cried. I can't tell you how many times I'm like, these people get it right. Like, they're inclusive, they're loving, they're kind, and then they have these great characters that they come up with. I don't know. Like, I want to be their friend. I feel like I am their friend. They don't know me, but, I watch them every week in my house. And I just connected better with them as a group than I did with, like, Acquisitions Incorporated, or, like, I love that for the intellectual, sit down and watch. But it's a little bit harder for me to follow Acquisitions Incorporated some than it is. There's just a lot of emotion with Critical Role, which I love. And they're good people. You could just tell they're good people. So that's my.
I point to campaign 2 all the time. Like, I have a good friend of mine that he's one of the people that he can't not watch all of something. So if the investment of getting into Critical Role is a big chunk for him, because he would have to go back and watch everything up until their next, right? So I get that. But I took the time to explain, for me, campaign 2, one of the most brilliant things that I've seen from a player's perspective and just the long play was how Liam played Caleb. And just the whole arc of everything he was doing bit by bit, where he was planning out that final payoff toward the end, if it should ever happen, with the potential, if I could bend time, I would go back and do this, and this is what it would be. And just, oh man, I cried at the end of that. Like, it's just the way he made that work. And if you go back and watch it again, you see the seeds being planted all along. It was a very conscious choice, which doesn't always work, like, from a playing perspective. I think he's one of my favorite players. I mean, I love them all, but just the way he brings that into his characters, I don't know. I think it's next to none with sort of playing through a long arc when you're going to have a long arc. It's one thing, like, when you're a Critical Role, that they're having these weekly episodes. At a home game, you don't know if everybody's going to show up next week, right? So it's harder to do that. Right. But this is a little bit easier to kind of, at least plan out the pacing of it. But I also tend to look at it from every time we watch. Like, I love to see how Matt does it as a GM, because I also think they're still playing D&D as much as it is a production. They're still, here's a DM, and here are the players, and they're still following rules. And it's so impressive to me. I think those things really are what keep me hooked. And I keep watching to see how he does things so I can learn and just maybe, make my games a little bit better. But yeah, it's just so impressive to me, like, how they're able to pull it off. So one of the other things I was wondering is, since you did start off sort of really quickly as a DM, what about Critical Role, or just any of the players, or Matt, or anybody in general, what about them has most impacted your own play style or gaming style with your friends? Like, what have you taken and what have you used, or is it completely different depending on the group?
Yeah, I think honestly one of the biggest things that I've learned from watching Critical Role is just a good reminder that, like, no home game is like Critical Role, because we don't have a staff. Like, we don't have like, Matt literally has people writing his setting now. Like, he has consultants working on, his setting, and, like, they have, he's paid to prep the game, so he can have these kind of big preps. And I don't know, I think it was a moment when I was just, like, beating myself up about my DMing, because I think a lot of people will compare themselves to whoever they watch the most, and then just be like, just remember, like, it's fine. You don't get to spend 10 hours a week prepping an encounter. Like, you have an hour if that to get it done.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of a big thing, which I think is really valuable, but I think sometimes people take the opposite route of, like, trying to be too much like it. I don't know. But also, I think those moments of just sitting back and letting your players run with whatever scene they're doing. I think when I first started, I felt like I really needed to have a handle, like a grip on everything too tightly. And now I think just, there are so many great scenes where you just see that, like, Matt would just sit back and just, like, he's totally off in that moment because he knows that he's just letting the players go. So I think that's a really valuable skill to have, is to know when to, like, kind of let go a little bit and just let the game play out.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the biggest takeaways I've had too, is just like let the players play, sit back a little bit. You don't force it, because those are things that don't require a big production. They don't require, a budget. You just let them do what they're going to do. I think that's huge. Also, I think the other big thing is trusting my players that they're gonna let the story unfold too, like they're collaborating with the story. We did a live stream which is nowhere near the production value. Like and I had a brand new player, never played D&D before, who was also live streaming in her first game, so that was like a whole other thing, and it was amazing just because they were so invested. And I was getting texts from her every day going, oh, I'd love to do this with my character, or what about this? And so I think I just take the whole trust what your players are doing. So this off topic one, I watched a video where you had your sister on cooking.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And how did everything turn out? Like, what was, because you were using the official D&D cookbook, right? Like how did it go?
I think that one turned out pretty good. So that's one of my like pre-Critical Role videos before I started covering that content. So yeah, because my sister is a cook, starting to be a chef. So yeah, she's very, very good at that stuff. So it was really fun to have her on with it. Yeah. I'm really excited for the Critical Role cookbook, because I actually loved making those cooking videos. I did quite a few, and I want to do more of them. But because I'm kind of at the point now where my channel is a Critical Role channel, if it's not a Critical Role video, then my audience won't watch it, which, is fine. But so now I'll be like, guys, it's Critical Role cooking.
Yes.
It's related. So that's going to be super fun. And I'm planning on doing a lot of cooking streams and stuff like that. Yeah. Because I love that. I'm not very good, but I enjoy it.
No, I think it's awesome, and I like. Well, you've got some views on our side because we watch cooking stuff all the time, so we'll watch it
all the time. I just sit there and I say, "We should try this. We don't even have a mixer. We should bake something together. We'd have to go get a stand mixer first."
Well, it is the Critical Cafe. You need to bake some muffins or something.
Well, this is true.
Yeah.
True.
Blueberry muffins. Yeah.
We do have an espresso machine, so we do have that part covered.
We've got that part covered. Yeah. So we've got the barista stuff ready to go. So, all right. So yeah, I mean, we can't not have you on and talk about theories. I know you recently, or I was watching some of your old stuff, but I know on your stream right before this, you were kind of going back and saying what theories worked or didn't. Right. So, do you have any like, we'll stay with campaign 3, but do you have any campaign 3 theories that are like, you're itching to find out what it is? Like, what are the ones that are most important to you that are like on top of your mind? Like, I need to know what's going on with these.
So I don't know. It's not super. It's kind of also intermingled with the campaign 2 theory, which we're kind of at the point now with the campaigns where they're so interconnected. It's really hard to separate them out, or at least campaign 3 is. Like campaign 2, I think they really stepped away. They were like, we're not going to make any references to campaign 1, and this one they're like all the references. But anyway, so this ties into the Luxon beacon, so from campaign 2. So I guess spoilers for that. My theory is that we know the Luxon beacons like collect souls and keep them in there for when there is a child born that has been consecuted and that soul is like put into that baby, right? My theory is that the Aormatons were made using a Luxon beacon, that the people of Aor found a Luxon beacon. I don't think it was made by them. I think they might have found it. They discovered it was full of souls, and then they found a way to put those souls into Aormatons. So that's the theory that I'm like, come on, Mercer, give it to me.
Yes.
I am so happy you just said that. That was one that Crystal and I were talking about, that we were like, I also think this kind of steps back a little bit, but I also think that campaign 3 is really inspired by what Matt didn't do with campaign 2. Mm-hmm. Like, and I think that's why a lot of these things are here, because I don't think, nobody was expecting Molly to die, right? So like it played out a whole different way, I think, than what Matt had planned. And so that's why I think there's so many threads that are in campaign 3, but I am completely on your side with the whole Luxon thing. I think that it's got to be part of it. Crystal, what's your big one that you're still like...
My biggest theory is about Ludinus himself. He's apparently so old, but I think somehow he's been able to harness the time traveling. Things have just played out too, like he knew what was going to happen at the solstice. He knew that they were going to be there. He knew just exactly how to get Vax'ildan to come down. You know, he knew all of the ways for that to happen. Yeah. Not flawlessly, but enough that it, you know, it paid off in the end for him, since, you know, now we know he's on the moon. But there's got to be, he's had to have sat and gone through the possibilities, or, you know, gone forward in time and back in time, or just been able to sit and do maybe visions, or he's been able to harness it somehow. That's kind of one of my biggest things is he's just been around so long, and he's caused so much widespread destruction, and, you know, for the name of like furthering what he thinks should happen, that he knows too much. He hasn't left much to chance, I think. That's just my big one.
I think that's pretty solid, especially because we know that, like, Aor were experimenting with time travel and time dilation, whatever. Yeah. I think that would make a lot of sense. In fact, I thought that was how he was sustaining his life. It does seem like now we have another answer for that. But I think it would make a lot of sense. And also, I just think it's like, I don't know if it would ever come back, but like Caleb then, like, you know, that was his goal, and then seeing the way Ludinus has used it, I think is really interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. I wonder if in the Echoes of the Solstice one shot we'll get anything about that.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. That would be great to find out a little bit more on those. So the other thing that really kind of piques my interest is how I think that there is a Delilah connection with Ludinus, because of both of them holding the same position at the same or at different times, with both of them being part of that whole Cerberus assembly, and being the head of that sort of all the mages of that area for that period of time, or well, he
would know her, right? Yeah, for sure, because he was the head of the entire, like, he founded it, right? He founded the Cerberus assembly, so
definitely connected somehow.
That's interesting.
And then the other biggest one that I know, Crystal, and we mentioned a little bit before, and I wanted to hear your take on this, Luna, is the idea of, and it's kind of been revealed a little bit, but they haven't really come out and said the words, but Laudna being a phylactery for Delilah.
Yeah.
And so, which is heartbreaking to me if it actually works that way, because then that would mean that she would have to go for Delilah to be really gone completely. And also she seemed to be weakest once they had to do the resurrection type thing with her and all that stuff. So I don't know, like, I'm just curious, like, how do you think that connection is going to play out, as far as, like, are they linked in that, like, direct line of she is sort of like a phylactery where that piece of her is there? I mean, kind of, it's one of those things that, like, you know, Voldemort at the end of the day was using phylacteries. They just called them something else, right? Like, so it was sort of that almost, I don't want it to cheese out and make it be like Harry was the phylactery and so is Laudna, but in that similar type vein, right? Like, where a part of her is surviving only because of Laudna's life.
Well, I think she even said that explicitly at one point. She sort of said, didn't she say, like, I'm fading and I'm going to take her with me? I'm pretty sure she said that when Imogen sent her the message, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some kind of connection there. And the fact that they weren't able to, like, drive her out altogether. I mean, I'm always in two minds about this, because what part of me is like, all right, come on, we've had Delilah quite a bit now. But clearly the cast are enjoying the connection, so, you know, that's fine. But yeah, that would be pretty, I mean, it would be kind of like another Vax'ildan situation, right? If Laudna has to choose to go. Yeah, I don't know. Or she just keeps her tucked away forever, like a little part of her mind. I don't know.
Poor Marisha, like having a whole situation
again.
Like that. Ugh. Yeah.
Well, I just realized today on stream, I mean, I know that the Immortner shippers have been talking about this for ages, but I'm not really in that space too much. But I had the realization today that because she's a Hollow One, she doesn't age. And then I'm like, but Imogen ages. And then I had this sort of spiral about, oh no, not again.
Yeah.
Where she's got another character that's going to live forever. What the hell?
Well, and then what if Imogen, her powers go away, you know, that makes it even worse in some instances, because, you know, here's Laudna forever tied to Delilah and having all of these issues and kind of, you know, being the witch in the woods. And then what's kind of made them, I think, so close with each other is they both have felt like outcasts. They both have felt like there's no place for them. And so if Predathos gets released and all these powers, kind of blow up with the gods or get eaten, I guess. It'll be interesting to see what happens with her powers. And does she turn into just a normal person then? And then, okay, are you going to continue living life as a normal person with, Baba Yaga-ish?
Yeah.
So
maybe they'll retire and then because someone in my stream said this, that maybe if Lauda does live forever, and especially if you're saying Delilah is tied to that, it could be a matter of we'll retire and live a happy life together, and then when Imogen's old, we'll see you later,
Yeah.
Which is also horrible to think about, but if that's the only way to get rid of Delilah, and Imogen is not.
But would they even be able to really do that too, though? That's because she can bring her back to life. That's the part that's.
Oh man, yeah.
You think we're riding off into the sunset together, but then
and Delilah's just in the background,
biding my time.
Yeah.
Well, up until just recently in the last few episodes where we started hearing that heartbeat and Delilah starting to come back, I thought that the shift was Delilah was gone enough where the new patron was the Sun Tree, and that's why the form of dread was more and more like tree, And that also makes me wonder is that pushing away the Sun Tree by letting Delilah back in, knowing what Delilah did to the Sun Tree, I don't know. It's interesting.
We haven't seen her form of dread yet, so maybe that might change. That'll give us a clue.
Well, she also did use the hound ability where she specifically references Delilah's hounds in Legend of Vox Machina, which are disgusting. That scene. I hate that so much in Legend of Vox Machina. It's so gross. So, that's a bit concerning. I honestly thought she was going to take another level in Warlock. I was really surprised that she took another level in Sorcerer in the level 10 jump up, because I thought maybe after what happened with Bordor, she would take a Warlock level.
I forgot about that. She did take another Warlock level. That's true. Yeah. Well, and speaking of, I know you, I'm not big on Reddit. I don't get a chance to see too many of the other theories, but I do follow your channel. So I know you mentioned the whole Bordor as Bordor Collie that we were all wrong about. It made so much sense for a while. It was so crazy and weird.
He was so suspicious. He was so suspicious. He was suspect, y'all.
Something was the handing. Played it so sweet,
Oh, it was so great. It was probably one of the best long cons. But the fact that I don't remember. Maybe it was you or someone else that mentioned the fact that he was giving out jerky to people, almost treats.
Yes.
I was like, this is great. So,
we were just latching onto literally anything to make that theory work. It was shoving a square peg into a round hole.
It wasn't it could have worked, maybe.
Weirder,
but it would have been a much nicer story, I think, than what we got.
Oh gosh, it was done so well.
Benefited from the fact that we thought that because we only got a little bit of the betrayal at the end, and it was really a huge impact. Because
we still weren't thinking he was a bad guy. We were thinking he was this cute little dog who vamped into consciousness or something.
So the one thing, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this, but Crystal and I were talking, I think, in our last show about now that they're together, you can sort of see the different perspectives on the gods starting to form within the group. How do you think that's going to play out? Because it's not so much of behind the scenes theory, but here's FCG who finally finds his own relationship with a deity. And then everybody else, not everybody, but a large chunk of the group is really start to wonder, hey, do we really need these gods? Even though they are against lewdness, it's still what happened with the Dawnfather Temple and everything else. They're starting to see the other side a little bit. So I'm just wondering how that will actually play out with them as characters, between the group, because we haven't had that much of a huge group dynamic shift since I don't know how long it's been, but I don't know, what are your thoughts on that, how that might play out?
It did feel like they kind of reached a bit of a consensus to be well, it's clear that we all have different opinions, but we're just gonna have to get on with it anyway. But yeah, the whole conversation about that is fascinating because it's, not to get too much into real world stuff, of course, but sure. It's different to debate the validity of the gods when they actually, you have definitive proof, you've talked to them. Yep. Most of them have actually been in the presence of not most of them, like half of them have been in the presence of a god before, because Fern, Aurum, and FCG have all been in the presence of a god. So yeah, it's just wild to me to think about, and people really don't like it when I say this, but sometimes I think, and I think it's okay that this is the case, sometimes I think narrative choices are made for business choices. So, there's a lot of speculation that the gods are being killed off because they're going to launch their new game system, and it'll explain why there's a mechanic shift or whatever. So the players might all be in on it. I don't know. Like, maybe they know that that's coming. People really hate when I say that. So please don't come for Brian and Crystal in the comments. This is my opinion only.
But it makes, I don't know, whatever. Come for me in the comments. It's okay. I don't care. I would, just personally, I think that if we want to see more Critical Role and want them to keep doing stuff, they have to make good business decisions too. And they're not doing it to, like, I don't know, even if they were making those choices, they're not doing it at the expense of the story and the game. I don't think they're still having it play out. So, but no, I mean, that was one of my other questions is, what do you think is going to, when Daggerheart comes out, you think the shift is going to be, we're playing Daggerheart now instead of D&D? I mean, it ruins their intro, but they have to say something different. Except
yeah.
But I would assume that that's what they do, right? Like, it just makes sense if they go that route. But yeah,
it would be wild to me if they release a game specifically designed for long-term play with a highlight on character progression, and then they don't use it. Like, yeah, I think there's no way in a million years they're not going to use it for campaign 4.
Well, yeah. I've been telling Brian this whole time, I'm like, he said that the gloves were off for campaign 3, and we just had Brendan Lee Mulligan coming in and just blowing everything up, and it was amazing and wonderful. And then I'm going, okay, are we going to see that for campaign 3? I personally think that the gods are going to be, Predathos is going to be released, and it's going to be another calamity. Like, I just think it's just going to, everything's going to tear up. And then that's a way to kind of end things, and just what I've kind of gleaned.
Yeah, I think my feeling is that I don't think I don't know. I've said this before, I could be totally wrong. I don't know if we're going to see them move away from Exandria for campaign 4, because again, from a business decision, changing your game system and changing the setting at the same time just feels incredibly risky to me, because I think it would alienate a lot of the fan base. So I think I think whatever happens in campaign 3 is going to be the setup for why there's a mechanics change. Just like how in D&D, we had like the spell plague, which explained the mechanics change. It was between 4th and 5th. I don't.
Yeah.
So like it kind of explained why there were mechanical changes. I think we're setting up now whatever the mechanical changes are going to be for Daggerheart. But yeah, maybe it'll be like Exandria, like far in the future or something. That would be fun. I don't know. It's scary to think to
post another calamity,
Yeah.
And I also wonder how, like, I don't think that, and again, I have no clue, so I'm talking to my ass a little bit, but like, I don't think that Daggerheart has to be completely different from D&D. Like, I mean, especially since, again, not to get into the whole OGL thing, but they released Creative Commons, all of 5e, so they can do what they want with that part of it and, make it work. They've already got published material that are sold. So to me, it'll be compatible enough that a lot of the older stuff should still work, or at least it'll fit in with the mechanics of the game. So I don't know. And if it's a completely different game, it's a completely different game, and they can release a new setting book or whatever, and that's fine too. But I'm all for them doing what they need to do. I think I don't even like the term third-party publishers. I think other publishers of other games need their time to shine too. And this would be the biggest competition that is out there for D&D. So if they're going to set themselves apart, set themselves apart with the setting, like keep Exandria. And even if you make some changes to it, there were changes that happened in the world after the calamity. And I think this is, and I think Matt even said it in the stream, like this is like a new calamity, what's going on right now with Ruidus. And so we should expect things to change. They don't have to be so drastic that all the gods go away, but maybe just the mechanics, like you said, might change moving forward. And I'm cool with that if they want to do that. I mean, it's not going to change anybody's home game, by the way. Those that are watching this in the comments, like, you can still take your stuff and play however you want, so it's just what they're going to produce and what they put on stream. So, but yeah, it's interesting. I didn't even know that there was really a dust up about that, or anybody really, firing back about, like, so that's how much I'm having touch with that. So yeah,
I think people just like the idea that it's still kind of like a home game when it just isn't anymore. I mean, they're still playing D&D for sure, but they're a business, they're a multi-million-dollar business. Like, they're making, every decision they make has a impact on their company. So I think we're seeing a new era for Critical Role. I think Campaign 4 will kind of be the launching point for that. I think they're getting there with Candela. Like, they're clearly pushing the boundary in terms of what they can do production wise. I'm one of those people, I would like to see them push it further. I wouldn't mind if they edited some of their episodes, because a lot of that stuff, I reckon, would be okay to be...
Can just go.
People are gonna hate me for this, but like, sometimes I think it's okay to, or even if they didn't edit things out, like, I would love to see multi-camera angles. Like, I love that for Dimension 20, and I know not everyone likes it because then you don't get to see everyone's reactions in the moment, but to me it just makes it more visually engaging, which I enjoy. So it would be interesting to see what kind of, where they push it in terms of production. Yeah,
and also I think Abria did this a little bit with Exandria Unlimited. And maybe she's done it with other campaigns too, but like, there's also this element that you can afford to do in a game like this or in a production like this, where you can not have people at the table and speak directly to the audience and let them know this is what's happening with the other characters. Good. I love that, and so, she uses the line, "This, what you don't see is," and I love that, like, as a way of, and I use that in my home games too, just to like kind of show what's not there. And sometimes that's as important as what you're actually witnessing. So anyway, so I agree. I think, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I do have, we're getting close on time, and I do have to ask you this because we're big fans of The Expanse. And I know that you said you are too. And I think you mentioned in one of your videos that either you were going to play or have played The Expanse role-playing games. So I wasn't sure if you had yet, or what your experience was with it. No? Okay, no, that's okay.
Honestly,
I didn't even know there was one, so don't worry. So this is great.
I'm sorry for all the fans of the game out there. I find the game, I mean, I haven't played it, but just reading the book, it's very crunchy. Like, it's extremely crunchy. And also, like, the formatting of the book, like, I have ADHD and I find the book very difficult to pass. Like, it's just visually, I don't know, like, it just doesn't work for me. So I actually, a person at my local game store suggested using what's it called? Scum and Villainy, which is the Blades in the Dark sci-fi adaptation, to use that for The Expanse instead, because it's a much simpler D6 system, but it has a lot of the similar kind of vibe. But yeah, my dreams of an Expanse campaign are still dreams. I bought that book in like 2020, I think, and or 2019 it must have been, and still have not run it.
It's okay. I love the world of it. So like, there's so many ways that you can adapt that setting. So yeah, that's
so
awesome.
Good. Yeah,
I'm so excited for the Telltale game that's coming out like in a week or two, right? The new game. So excited for that.
It's a perfect version to do. Like, that's a great way of handling that story. The Telltale stuff is always like a good way of being very story driven. So I'm a fan of that. That's awesome.
I am also a sufferer of ADHD, so I totally understand what you're... Brian's like, Crystal. And I'm like... I'm sorry.
So I tried to get a game running, and we did the character creation, which was just felt really complicated. And I don't know if it is more complicated than D&D, or if it's just because I had someone who knew what they were doing to walk me through that. Like, it's much harder, I think, when you're trying to learn it and walk your players through it at the same time. But yeah, we kind of did the character creation. It was really hard, and then we never played.
You're like, well, this was fun.
It says a lot about the system too, because most of the time I create characters just to create characters. Like, if it's fun to create characters, sometimes you don't even have to play. You can just create characters just to have fun doing that. And
I have so many characters that I've created that I've never seen any play. That's my favorite part, is the character. I came to D&D after being like an avid World of Warcraft player. So I love having lots of characters and I'll just leave them where they are and move on with another one whenever we have a new game. And But I like the crafting aspect. That's the one thing that I feel like I need a little bit more of with D&D. I need the crafting and, you know, I want to like do some herbalism and some alchemy.
I think Pathfinder has a lot more support for that. I mean, I haven't played it, but I've heard that it has a lot more.
Brian has brought the book in and
like that.
Yeah, Brian's brought the book in for me to look at, and he's like, "Okay, well, look through this and see if this helps more." And I'm like, "Yeah, it does. It's just, you know,
we'll adapt anything we can." Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, if the players want to do something, I want to try to make it happen. It's just a matter of like, how do you make it fit in so that it works? Because there are like downtime activities, there are ways you can do that, but like to make it fun in game, to be going around gathering components, it's hard when there's other players at the table to make that work.
Well, I'm like, I have a whole notebook on mushrooms. You know, like,
do you have the Herbalist's Guide? Have you gotten that book?
I haven't gotten that.
It's I can't remember what it's called. It's so, you would love it if you like that stuff. Yeah, Herbalist Primer or something like that. I'm looking at my bookshelf to see if I can see what it's called, but it's too far away. But yeah, anyway, it's really good. It's got like all like real world herbs and stuff, but like all their like magical properties, and like it's really cool. Fun for it's really good.
That's a good gift idea.
Yeah. I feel like they had a lot of just write it down. I'll send it to you later. They had a lot more of that stuff in campaign 1. I think maybe it was because they came from Pathfinder. Like they were constantly like, okay, I'm gonna skin this animal to see what I can make out of it, and then I'm
gonna mine this ore.
Not so much in campaign 2. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think for on stream as well, they might have dropped a lot of that stuff because it does get a bit tedious, you know, when they're trying to work it out on stream.
Yeah. Crystal's least favorite thing that happens is a shopping episode. So like, she tunes out completely as soon as there's a shopping episode. So it's like,
unless there's really cool stuff that they're getting, then I pay attention to that. But half the time I'm just like, oh my gosh, guys, make the choice. Let's go.
Yeah, especially in campaign 2, they did a lot of those because they really focused on buying spell components a lot more. And I'm like, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that on screen. But
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I know we're coming up on time. I wanted to make sure that everybody can find you. And so do you want to let everybody know where you are online and where they can subscribe to your channel? Because everybody go subscribe. You will love everything she's talking about on stream and on her YouTube channel as well. So where can they find you?
So at Luboffin, this is down there. I'm at Luboffin everywhere. So mainly YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. Although I tried to tweet twice today and it didn't work, so I don't know what's going on with that. And I have also done a bit of stuff on TikTok, trying to get out there, reach the youth.
No, I'm so resistant on Twitter and TikTok. I'm like, what? I gotta do what?
TikToks and interwebs. I don't know what I'm doing.
I know. I'm too old. This is gray hair.
I've got both of you covered. So it's all right. Well, thanks so much. And everybody tune in next time when we go over stuff about Critical Role. But please, head over to Luna's channels, Luboffin, on all of the things. Subscribe, say hi to her while you're over there. And, we will catch you next time, Critical Cafe.